everybody, it's Mel. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am going to be talking about 45 books that I would like to read before I turn 45. So yeah, on the day that this goes up, I will be 43. So I've only got 2 years until I reach 45. I feel like in the booktube world that makes me quite old because I got the idea for this video from quite a number of different booktubers who I've seen doing something similar, but it's usually a 30 books before 30. Obviously I very much missed the boat on doing that specific version of it, so instead today we're going to talk about 45 books that I would like to read before I turn 45. So I do only have 2 years, as I said, which means that I'm not 100% sure how I will go with this list, because obviously I have my TBR game, I have various themed vlogs, I have other things that I want to do, book clubs that I join, Patreons, my own Ko-Fi, all of these sorts of things that influence what I manage to get to and read. So I don't know how many of these books will actually be read by the time I turn 45. I'm not going to make myself do that. I'm not going to put pressure on myself to read all of these books. So what I have done is, first of all, I've asked a few different people for recommendations of books that they think that I should add to this list. A couple of years ago, when my channel turned 2, I did do a video which I will link down below, where I asked a bunch of different amazing booktube friends to recommend some books to me. Now, some of the books that they recommended I have in fact got around to reading in that time, but quite a few of them I haven't managed to read yet. So I thought that I would add those that I haven't read yet to this list, because I really appreciate that these people gave it some thought, what I might like, what I might be interested in, what they thought that they would like me to read for various reasons, and I just appreciate that very much. I don't want it to just be a video that I made and kind of forget about, but it has been a couple of years, so I thought that may be a good way to remind myself and try and prioritize some of those books to actually read them. Like I said again, not necessarily forcing myself to read them in the next few years, but just to be aware that these are some books that people thought you'd enjoy, you should give them a try. Insofar as the books that I have managed to read since that video, I will just direct you to go ahead and watch the video rather than going through that again, because we have 45 books to talk about today and it's going to take a while, so I don't particularly want to go through a bunch of other books that I've already read, but that video is linked below. Obviously anybody whose channel that I mention will be linked below as well. Then I have a bunch of other books that are in series that I'm trying to prioritize. I am trying to prioritize a little bit reading series because, again, another video that I made recently, which I will put in the description below, but I did do all the series that I'm in the middle of, and there were quite a lot more than I was expecting. So I do want to have some that I'm catching up on and finishing out if that's possible, or just catching up on, so some of those are in there. And some that I'm just generally keen to read. They may in fact be series starters themselves. I don't think there's many of those, but there might be a couple in there. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk through all of those books. They're all down here, that's why I keep looking down here. I do have the computer here. Some of the books I own, some of them I don't own, so I might hold them up or I might have to put them on screen. But yeah, anyway, you know how BookTube works. So the first book that I have on this list was a book that my mum recommended to me, and that is Songlines by Margot Neal and Lynn Kelly. And it is a part of a series called First Knowledge, which overall I believe is edited by Margot Neal. This is a series of books that are, it says on the blurb, what do you need to know to prosper as a people for 65,000 years? The First Knowledges series provides a deeper understanding of the expertise and ingenuity of Indigenous Australians. So it is looking at a variety of different cultural practices and just general practices, skill sets that Indigenous people practiced, put into practice throughout the millennia, and talking about different aspects of their culture and society. This one is talking about songlines, and again it says on the back, songlines are the means of storing and learning knowledges, ancient and modern. They are stories embodied in the land, sea and skies, to be remembered and passed on through song, dance, art, ceremony, and most importantly through attachment to country. So yeah, this is a book about Indigenous stories and Indigenous storytelling and the importance of that, and yeah, I think it's going to be really, really interesting. My mum really enjoyed it. She found it really powerful and really interesting, and she just thought that I would enjoy it and get a lot out of it. So that's the first book on my 45 book list. The next book is The Natural Navigator by Tristan Gooley. This was recommended to me by my dad, and it says on the back again, discover the lost art of reading nature's own signposts. Starting with a simple question, which way am I looking? The Natural Navigator uses little known methods from around the world to introduce you to the forgotten art of finding your way using nature's clues. My dad read this one obviously as well and really, really enjoyed it, and he thought that I would find it quite interesting as well, which is why he recommended it. Both of these books are the only non-fiction on this list, and I'm just really excited to dive into them and find out what it is about them that my parents found so incredibly interesting and that they think I would find interesting. So thank you, Mum and Dad, for giving me these two books as recommendations. Next up is the book Gone by Michael Grant. This is the first book in a series. I don't know a huge amount about this series. I believe that is a post-apocalyptic type series, and I think that it is something where all of the adults have been taken and all of the teenagers have to try and just survive. I think that's what it's about. This was recommended to me by my youngest sister, Carol. She really, really enjoyed this series, and she's actually talked to me about it a few times and suggested I give it a try. I haven't done so yet, and then when I asked her to give me a recommendation for this video, she again gave me this. So I really do need to get around to it. It's something that she's really enjoyed, and I really do want to give it a try, see what I think of it, and so I can talk to her about it. So that's the next one on the list. So thank you very much, Carol, for the recommendation. Next up, we have the book The Secrets of Jin Shay by Alma Alexander. I don't know anything really about this one. I believe that it's historical fiction, maybe with a little bit of magical realism sort of things thrown in there. This was recommended to me by my other sister, Julie. She actually lent this book to me probably about 2 years ago now, and I haven't managed to get around to reading it, but she really, really enjoyed it, and she thought that I would really enjoy it, which is why she lent it to me. And yeah, I haven't got around to it yet, so I really do need to give it a read, if for no other reason than so I can give it back to her. It'd also be good to, again, give a book that my sister really enjoyed a try. So thank you very much, Julie, and sorry also. But yeah, there's that one. Then we have 3 books recommended to me by my partner Rowan. They are The Blade Itself, Before They Are Hanged, and The Last Argument of Kings, all by Joe Abercrombie. So this trilogy is called the First Lore Trilogy. It is quite popular on BookTube, so I'm sure that you would have heard of it before. I know there are quite a number of people that thoroughly enjoy this series. It is a book series that is on my list to read before 45. I did actually read the first one a while ago, probably about 3 years ago now, and I did really enjoy it, but I haven't picked up the other 2, and I remember some, but I do feel like I probably need to have a reread before I continue with the series. So that's why the first one is on the list along with the other 2 books as well. So The First Lore Trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, recommended to me by my partner Rowan. The next book is The Great Believers by Rebecca Mackay. This was added to this list by my best friend Max recently, but it was sent to me by my other best friend Ellie a few years ago now. So it is one of Ellie's favourite books, and it is a book that Max has really loved as well, which is why they've both recommended it to me. I don't know a huge amount about this one either, but I know that it has been compared to The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. I'm looking forward to reading it, but I'm a little bit concerned about how I'm going to survive it. But anyway, yeah, it's that one. Then we have a book that was sent to me by my best friend Rachel and recommended to me as a book that we should buddy read together, and I do believe that we are intending to do that possibly in May. I'm not 100% sure, I can't remember, but soonish anyway. And that is, again, Rachel by Marian Keyes. This is a follow-up to Rachel's Holiday by Marian Keyes, which is the second book, I believe, in the Walsh family book series. So we follow Rachel, who is the middle daughter in a family of 5 daughters, and it is about her recovery from addiction to drugs. That's the first one. Not 100% sure what exactly this is going to be about, but it is a few years later, and we're looking again at Rachel and her life. So yeah, I'm excited to read this one. I absolutely love Rachel's Holiday, and I'm really looking forward to buddy reading this with my best friend Rachel. The next book is another book recommended by another best friend, and that is a book recommended by my friend Bibiana, and that is Daughter of the Forest by Juliet Marilia. This is another very popular book on BookTube, so I feel like you probably know what this is about. As far as I'm aware, this is a fantasy with a little bit of romance, and it is the first in a series. It is a fantasy set in, I'm not sure if it's set in Ireland or set in an Irish type fantasy world. I believe it is a retelling of the Swan Princess, maybe? I'm not 100% sure, don't quote me on that. But yeah, I've heard really great things about this one. It sounds absolutely fantastic. I also know that Bibiana would quite like me to read it and quite like it back. So I definitely need to prioritize reading this one. Although it's starting a series, but I mean, I'm always starting series, so what can you do? The next book was recommended to me by my best friend Michelle. Yes, I have a lot of people I call best friends, but you know, there you go. And that is At Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is the third and final book in the Brown Sisters trilogy, and we follow Eve Brown, who is a little bit of a mess, but it's her romance story. That's kind of what I really know about it. I'm not even sure if that's correct, but I will find out when I read it. I enjoyed Chloe, loved Danny, so I'm really hoping to really enjoy Eve Brown as well. And yeah, that's that one. Okay, and now we are going into some of the books recommended by some of my BookTube besties. That was in that video, like I said, that is linked below, so do go and check that out if you'd like to see everyone that was included in the video and was very kindly suggesting books for me. But yeah, this next book is the beginning of that list. So first up, we have a book recommended to me by Helen from Helen's Bookhaven, and that book is The Readers of Broken Wheel Recommend by Katarina Bivold. I don't know anything about this book other than I think it's a contemporary book, potentially with a romance, but I really know nothing else. But Helen seemed to think that it would be right up my alley. She really enjoyed it, so I'm very much looking forward to giving it a shot. The next book is a book that's going to surprise you all because I've never read any of the books in this series or subsequent series, or in fact any book written by this author. But the book is Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. Yeah, I know. I've never read any Percy Jackson books or anything written by Rick Riordan. I think it was just one of those things where it came out too late. I didn't really hear about it until I started BookTube. It was aimed at middle grade and I was well past middle grade at the point where it was being released. Don't know, but anyway, I've been hearing nothing but amazing things about the Percy Jackson series and all the other subsequent series in that world. Since I started watching BookTube, it is one of Ellie from Earl Grey Books' favourite series of all time. Percy is one of her favourite characters of all time. Her cat is named Percy after Percy Jackson, and I really need to read this series. I really need to give it a shot because it's one of my best friend's favourite series, but also it's a very well-loved book-to-net book and series. So the first book Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief is going on this list, but I do really want to read all of them. Obviously if I enjoy The Lightning Thief, but I do think that I will. It sounds right up my street. It is a middle grade, not really a retelling, but Greek mythology inspired story, and that's basically all I know about it, but it sounds like it's going to be really fun and definitely excited to read it. Then we have Game Board of the Gods by Rochelle Mead. This book was recommended to me by Kat from Stars and Embers. I don't know anything really about this book. I know that Rochelle Mead is one of Kat's favourite authors. Her Vampire Academy series is probably the most well known of her series, and I think Kat's favourite series of hers, but she did say that she thinks I will really enjoy this series. It is more of a high fantasy, and yeah, it sounds like something I'd really enjoy. Like I said, I don't know much about it, but it does sound really interesting, so I'm definitely excited to give it a go, and hopefully I'll enjoy it and potentially read the rest of the series. It is starting another series, but what can you do when that's what people recommend? Sorry if the angle has changed a little, I had to switch the battery out. But anyway, I'm back. Next up we have Madam by Phoebe Wynne. I know nothing whatsoever about this book. This was recommended to me by Victoria from What Victoria Read. I know that she gave me a bit of a description and why she thought I would like it in the video, but I don't remember what she said. I believe that it is a literary fiction, historical fiction type of book, maybe with a little bit of mystery in it. I know when I heard her talking about it, I thought it sounded right up my alley, and Victoria certainly seems to think that it is, so fingers crossed, but I'm very excited to give it a go, and thank you, Victoria. Thank you, everybody. I haven't thanked everybody for a while, but thank you, everybody. Next up, we have two books recommended to me by Lana. Lana used to be from the channel Lore and Lullabies, but they've actually changed the channel and it is now the India Chords, and it's run by Lana and another person called Jordan, and it's going to be focused much more on indie books. So as you might imagine, I'm pretty sure both of these books are indie books. The first of these is Fantasy of Frost by Kelly St. Clair. This was sent to me by Lana a couple of years ago now. It is really short and it's really bad that I haven't read this one yet. I've put it on 3 or 4 different TBRs, and for one reason or another I just haven't managed to get to it, but I do really need to read it. It's one of Lana's favourite books. It sounds really interesting. I don't know a huge amount about this one, but it is a fantasy story, as you might imagine, following a young woman on some type of adventure with lots of terrible things happening, but that kind of help her to become who she's meant to be. Really bad description, but it sounds really fun, and yeah, I really want to read it. The second of the books that Lana recommended to me was The Longing of Lone Wolves by Lana. I'm going to butcher the surname, so I'm not going to even attempt it, but the cover and the name is up here. Another book that I know basically nothing about, other than the fact that it's some kind of fantasy book that Lana really loves and she'd like me to read. I think part of the reason why she thinks I'd be interested in this is the hot man on the cover, which I have to admit is kind of intriguing, but it doesn't tell me much about what the story is going to be about. I do believe it's a fantasy romance, however, so yeah, I will hopefully enjoy it. Then we have Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. This was recommended to me by Brooke from Brooke's Books, and it sounds absolutely gorgeous. It is about a cafe where you can time travel, but you have to time travel to wherever it is that you're wanting to go to before your coffee gets cold. I think it sounds just absolutely adorable. I've heard nothing but amazing things about this one. It is actually my In Real Life Book Club's book for March and April, so I very much hope and imagine that I'll get to this by the end of April, but I haven't read it yet and Brooke suggested it to me, so it needs to go on this list. But it sounds really cute and I'm really excited for it. Then we have another book that I know almost nothing about, and that is The Summer That Melted Everything by Tiffany McDaniels. This was recommended to me by Olivia Savannah from Olivia's Catastrophe. She recommended this book to me because I really enjoyed The Goldfinch, and she thought that this would be one that I would really like as well. So I'm assuming that's going to be a literary fiction, quite hard-hitting, kind of sweeping drama, but that's about all I know, or all I suspect. But I'm looking forward to it. It sounds really interesting, and I really like the cover. It makes it look really interesting as well. So yeah, fingers crossed. Then we have The Rosie Project by Graham Simsian. This was recommended to me by Mo from Paperback Mo. The channel doesn't exist anymore, but the recommendation still does. So definitely really want to read it. I don't know anything about this one either. I'm really doing very badly at this, aren't I? But I know that Mo thought that I'd really enjoy it, and it sounds like something I potentially would like. So I will give it a try, hopefully at some point over the next couple of years. Then we have The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. This one was recommended to me by Crystal from Bon Book Reviews. I do actually know a little bit about this one. I believe it's set in the Great Depression in America. It is a historical fiction. It's apparently incredibly well written and very heart-wrenching, which are things that I really enjoy in my historical fiction, so I'm very much looking forward to reading this one. I've heard nothing but amazing things about it and Kristen Hanna as an author in general, so I'm very much looking forward to this one, and I really hope I enjoy it. Then I have two recommendations from two people who used to be on the same channel but now are on two separate channels. So they are Scott and Nell, formerly of Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, although Nell now has the channel Book Unt. So anyway, they both recommended a book to me. Nell recommended The Blind Assassin by Margaret Atwood, and Scott recommended Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. The Blind Assassin, I'm pretty sure, is also a historical fiction. I don't know a lot about this one either, but I do love The Handmaid's Tale, love The Peloponnesiad, didn't love The Edible Woman, but oh, fingers crossed, fingers crossed. It does sound like it could be really good. And then Piranesi, I feel like I know a little bit about this, but I have no idea how to describe it. But it's supposed to be a little bit strange, a little bit of a mystery, a little bit to do with Greek mythology. And yeah, apparently I will really enjoy it. So I've always thought it sounded really good, so definitely keen to get to that one. All right. That is the end of all of the recommendations that have been made to me, both from family and friends, as well as that from that specific video where I asked BookTube friends to make recommendations for me as well. So now I'm moving into some books that I'd like to read for various reasons. A lot of them are to finish series, but also just because they have been sitting on my shelves and I really need to get to them. So the first of these is Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. It is set in the Grishaverse, much like most of Leigh Bardugo's young adult books. It follows a team of thieves, and that's all I'm going to say. But I really want to read it, so it's on the list. And then we have two books from a series that I started about 2 years ago now, and I really want to finish them, so they're going on this list to help me do so, and they are A Reaper at the Gates and A Sky Beyond the Storm by Sabah Tahir. These are the final two books in the An Ember in the Ashes quartet. This is a fantasy world based around the Roman Empire, and yeah, I really enjoyed the first two books, so I definitely want to finish out the series, so it's going on the list as well. The next book is The Sword of Kaigan by M.L. Wang. This is a standalone fantasy that is inspired by Chinese mythology and history, and I've heard absolutely amazing things about it. I did start reading this in July of last year, but due to having COVID and yeah, different things like that, I didn't quite manage to read it. I only read probably the first 70 pages or so. I do have a plan to buddy read this with Cara from Wild Book Garden. I don't remember off the top of my head when we decided to do that, but I believe it was in June or July. But either way, I definitely would like to read it in the next couple of years, and I definitely hope to read it this year, so it's going on the list, and hopefully it will in fact be read. Then we have Attilie Coulter and the Narrowway Hunt by Rhiannon Williams. This is the first book in a fantasy middle grade series, which is written by an Australian author, and I believe that it's fantasy world, but I believe that some of the setting is inspired by Australia, which is very exciting. This book was sent to me by Ellie from Earl Books, and she absolutely loved it. She thinks I will absolutely love it. It sounds really, really cool. So Attila Coulter ends up having to disguise herself as a boy to rescue her brother. And yeah, it just sounds like it's going to be really, really fun, and I'm really excited to give it a go. Then we have two books that I really should have read 20 years ago. And they are, I've gone and gotten the wrong two books. And they are City of Dragons and Blood of Dragons. And Blood of Dragons I have borrowed and is here somewhere, but I grabbed the wrong book, by Robin Hobb. These are the last two books, book 3 and 4 of the Rainwild Chronicles, which is part of the Realm of the Elderling series. I have described the Realm of the Elderling series a number of times as my favourite series, one of my favourite series of all time. But I never read the Rainwild Chronicles. I've explained this a few times, but basically I tried reading the first one and I couldn't really get into it. It wasn't quite what I was expecting, and it didn't feel quite as epic as the rest of them, so I just didn't really love the first book, or the first bit of the first book that I read. So I put it down, and I'm finally picking it up, finally reading the series. I haven't read the rest of the series in quite a long time, so I have no expectations of this anymore. But yeah, I'm really, really enjoying the series. I enjoyed the first two, and I really need to read the second two, so it's going on this list as well. Then we have two more books that, again, I really ought to have read 20 or so years ago. The first of these is Riviera Gold by L'Oreal King, and the second of these is Castle Shade, which I don't even own yet. Again, also by L'Oreal King. These are the last two, I'm pretty sure, books in the Russell and Holmes series. So this is a series about Mary Russell, who in the first book becomes an apprentice to the retired Sherlock Holmes, and he is teaching her how to be a detective, basically, and the series goes from there. I love this series. It's also one of my favourite series of all time, but again, I haven't finished it yet. That's just me being slow and actually not even realising that she was continuing. This one was published in 2020, and I thought the series was finished, to be honest. But I really do need to catch up and finish it out, so I'm adding it to the list along with Castle Shade, because I need to read this series. I need to finish it. Then we have a duology by Hank Green, and that is an absolutely remarkable thing and a beautifully foolish endeavour. Again, I don't yet own a beautifully foolish endeavour. I definitely want to pick it up. I have already read this one, but I feel like I need to reread it in order to continue with the series. It's just a duology, so really there's no reason for me not to have read the second one yet, but here we are. This is a sci-fi. Well, it's more of a contemporary with some sci-fi elements. I really, really enjoyed this one, and like I said, I really want to pick up the second one. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say, but definitely going on the list. Then we have another duology. This time I have not read either of these books, but I'm definitely keen to read them, and in fact, I have made plans again for a buddy read, this time with Ren from the Reading Ren. I, again, don't quite recall when we decided to read them. I believe sometime in the second half of the year. But anyway, the books are Children of Blood and Bone and Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi Adeyemi. This is an African-inspired fantasy story. That's basically all that I know about them. They also don't tell you much on the blurb. These were very, very popular on BookTube when I first started my channel, and they sounded really cool, which is why I've picked them up, but I haven't got around to them yet. So I'm definitely very keen to give them a try and see what I think of them. Very excited to read them with Ren. I think that'd be a really fun way to read them. So then we have a Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. This is the most recent book in the Court of Thorns and Roses series. I don't know if this is the final one. I believe she might be writing another one as well. This was sent to me by Ash from Ash's Adventures in Books. Thank you, Ash. That was a very kind present. I really do need to get around to reading this. I really, really enjoyed the original trilogy, particularly the second book, A Court of Mist and Fury. So I'm hoping that I really enjoyed this one as well. I believe this follows the main character from the original trilogy's sister, Nesta, and yeah, we'll see how we go. Then we have The Betrayals by Bridget Collins. This is a kind of historical fantasy. I picked this one up basically because I absolutely love The Binding by Bridget Collins that I read probably about 2 years ago now, and I saw this in a secondhand bookstore and thought that, well, first of all, it's absolutely beautiful, but also thought that it sounded really interesting as well. So I definitely would like to read it. It's been sitting on my shelf for a while now, so I'm definitely keen to give it a read. Then we have The Watchmaker of Filigree Street by Natasha Pulley. This is another historical fiction, I believe, with some fantastic elements in there. Again, I love the cover of this one. I picked this one up completely on a whim. I just thought it looked really interesting and fun. I have heard from a couple of booktubers that this is a really, really interesting, really fun book, so I'm very excited to give it a read. Then we have Heirs of Power, Book 1 of the Constellations Saga by Kay MacLeod. Kay MacLeod is the sister of Kaz from Cats and Camera, and Kaz has talked about her sister's books a few times on her channel, and they always just sound really, really fantastic and really interesting. So I think this was sent to me by Lana as a thank you for being a host of the first Indie Chords readathon. Yes, it was. I'm really excited to read this one. Like I said, it sounds really, really fun. It is a fantasy book about people who have power. And yeah, that's pretty much all I know, but it sounds really, really, really great. And it's been on my shelf now, again, for almost 2 years, so I really need to read it. Then I have the book Precious Catastrophe by Deirdre Sullivan. This is the second book in a duology. The first book was Perfectly Preventable Deaths, which is another book that I picked up completely on a whim and really, really enjoyed. I didn't even know there was a sequel until recently, and I've now added it to my TBR. I don't yet own it, but at some point I will buy it. But I did really enjoy the first one, and I'd like to finish the duology and be able to say that that's a series I have read, so I'm putting it on this list as well. Similar reason, the next two books are books in a series that I read recently. I read the first one recently, really, really enjoyed it, and I'd like to be able to get the entire series off my series list, but also I enjoyed it and I would like to read the other two. So they are The Gifts That Bind Us and Every Gift a Curse by Caroline O'Donoghue. The first one is All Our Hidden Gifts. This series is a sort of fantasy, paranormal, contemporary stories set in Ireland. And again, like I said, I really enjoyed it, so I'd like to finish the series. Then we have The Dutch House by Anne Patchett. This is a historical fiction set in Paris, I believe. Don't really know much about this one. I just know that it sounds really, really fun and really interesting. I have heard that Anne Patchett is a fantastic author with a really great writing style. This was given to me by my friend Michelle for my birthday last year, I think. She thought that I'd really enjoy it, and I definitely want to give it a try. And again, it's been sitting on my shelf for a while now, so I do need to read it. So it's going on this list. And then the final book is another book that I want to read in order to finish a series, and that is The Forgetting of Georgie Spider by Amberlynn Quay-Molina. This is the third and final book in the Tribe trilogy. I absolutely love the first two books of this trilogy. The first one is called The Interrogation of a Charla Wolf, and the second one is called The Disappearance of Ember Crow. We follow a bunch of different characters who are the Tribe, and they are kind of a found family that are calling themselves the Tribe. They're a group of people who have special powers, and in the world where they live, it's a post-apocalyptic world, which is very similar to in landscape to Australia. Yeah, the people who have these powers are considered to be outcasts, considered to be not welcome, not okay, and yeah, these people run away from society and live in the woods or the bush, call themselves a tribe. That's all I'm going to say, but I definitely really enjoyed the first two books and I really, really want to finish the series. This one we follow Georgie Spider, and I'm keen to see what the conclusion will be. So, those are all 45 of the books that are on my list of 45 books I'd like to read before I turn 45. So I've got 2 years to read these books. I do intend when I turn 45 to do a video where I look back and let you know how I went. So in 2 years, look forward to that. But yeah, that's everything that I wanted to talk to you about today. Do you have any predictions on which books I will end up reading, which books I will end up loving, any books that you think I won't end up liking? Please comment all of that down below. Have you done a X number of books before you turn X type of video or list on Instagram or anything like that? Please leave me a link to that down below so I can go and have a look, because I'm always really interested to see what books people put on those sorts of lists. But yeah, leave me any other comments about this video down below. If you'd like to leave me a comment but you don't know what, then leave me the shrugging emoji, because who knows if I'm actually going to read these books, if any of them. All of my social media details are listed in the description below, so if you'd like to go and follow me on any of those other platforms, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would absolutely love it if you would subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. And yeah, like I said, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.